All right, here we are with Ifioque Bernard, hailing from Nigeria. I try my best
Yeah,
to
you
get
did.
it.
You did. You did.
Tell us, more about your location and also your pronunciation of your name.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. My name is Ifioque Bernard. I am from the southern part of Nigeria called Akwa Ibom, and I speak a language called Ibibio, besides English, of course.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know if you know much about Nigeria, but Nigeria has 36 states and over 700 local governments like mine, where almost all of them have a very distinct language they speak and very homogeneous, I must say. That's where I'm from, and that's my name.
Okay, thank you so much. And yes, one of the things that is really unfair to the rest of the world is that we don't get enough information about the different countries in Africa. And say, for example, Nigeria, where you're from, and you're, sharing, well, it's 36 state and over 700 different languages. Is that what you said?
Our
And
local government,
including
yes.
dialects. Imagine that the
Yeah.
richness of the motherland, and yet it's continued to be a secret because we on the Western side are not, for some reason, we are filled with Western ideologies and not understanding the African ideologies. And it's so unfair, don't you think?
I think it is unfair. I also know experientially that the West does not ignore Africa, it just suppresses it. Let me say that again. The West does not ignore Africa, it just suppresses it. Why? Cobalt, lithium, californium, titanium, gold, diamond, silver, bauxite, uranium. Do you know how many things the West gets from Africa? They just don't.
I do
Yeah,
know that, and they don't, and they get it. You're right, through the continuous colonial suppression, as you said. And, let's use the word slavery. It is still happening. And unfortunately, many people do not know that their expensive cell phones will not operate without cobalt, without all those chemicals and natural resources that only Africa possess. Yeah.
yes,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Our info, the information, you said, well, the West knows. The West in terms of the powers that be, but not the little guy who needs to know in order to identify himself well, correct?
yes.
So inform us.
Okay.
Tell us more.
Um, all right. So here's the thing. I have lived in, I have been to, I think, 9 countries at this point, but I've lived in Africa and in Nigeria all my life. I'm from here. I was born here. So both my parents are from here. And I'll say this, it makes sense to the big West. It makes sense to them to take from Africa whilst also suppressing Africa. Suppressing Africa down to the mention of the African countries where they take precious materials, natural resources, and very, very cheap labor from. It makes sense to them. Why? If I were exploiting you for amazing stuff that you have, and I know the opportunity cost of these things to you and to myself, it would not make sense for me to let people like myself know that I am able to get these things from you. Why? Number one, it would create an internal competition, conflict of interest. That means I am also that if I let other people know how interesting the things you do for me are,
Hmm.
now I'm no longer gatekeeping it, and other people would want it, and that's a problem. That's a conflict of interest. Number two, it progressively lets you know how valuable you are. Do you understand? It progressively opens your eyes to how valuable you are. And I
Hmm.
am worried because at some point you might realize, you know what, I don't even need this guy, you know?
Hmm.
And then you might revolt and get out of my cage. That's typical.
Yeah.
That's typical. That's typically
So
what happens.
You said it in a mild way and you articulate it well, but if we're gonna get to the nitty-gritty, basically, we come back to the chokehold, you
If
know.
I if I want to dive as deep as it is in my head into this
Yeah.
subject, you would not be able to use this video on the internet because it would be
I know that, and because we are very put it this way, we're heightened and alert.
yeah.
So we're just going to be as present
So
and
I'm giving you the PG
version.
consumable kind because if I were to go as deep as I actually feel like I could, you would not be able to use the video. You would be it would be taken down everywhere.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. So yes, the wool has been, over our eyes. There's a saying that when people are captivate or in captive then, right? And we experience, in the West, they call it Stockholm syndrome. You just all of a sudden think that this should be happening. I have nowhere else to go except where I am and my master and to serve my master in that kind of way. And then you don't try to escape, then that's how the world that's how the world is operating. We're just being robotic, right? And we are on co-pilot based on who is, running the show. So I do understand what you're saying, and it is unfair, and possibly it's time to agitate. It's probably time to, get started, if you want to put it that way.
The agitation is long overdue. Do you know that? And I will not say it because again, I don't want to put you and myself in trouble. Do you know that there is a president who has been put on a lifetime salary of $1 million in exchange for free trade between a certain very powerful country and a certain African country? Um, Total immigrational open doors where that certain country can come into the African country I am not mentioning and literally buy anything for a fraction of the price, resell it, process it, possibly sell it back to that African country
Well,
and other.
because this is an educational program, and this is, I'm thinking this is news, considered global news, and it should be. Let's go ahead and state the country. Why not? It's a mix of geography, history, and sociology. So go ahead, share.
Uh,
Which country? So you're saying that there's a country in Africa that engage in a political agreement for open immigration and to kind of lift sanction from owning private property by its citizens. So citizens from that powerful nation, which is the US, can go into this African country, what is the name of the country?
can you please do me a favor? Why I am
This
why
is this is going to be unedited. I just upload. So if whatever we do, I have no capability of doing it. So
uh, I want you to do me a favor. Why I want you to do this is already a very number one need to know kind of topic. Number two, it's already very sensitive. So sensitive because, of course, it is bad on every level, including by international law. It is terrible. You
okay.
understand? I drew it as an example to show you how bad the situation is to the point where, if you need to own property in another country, you don't just need the money to buy that. That's typically the easiest part.
Hmm.
There are immigrational processes you should take to own property in any country, right?
Hmm.
This African country has their president put on a lifetime $1 million a year salary to allow for the fact that the other country in the West can literally just citizens there can just come in here without a visa, by the way, just an
Mhm.
air come in here,
So
buy
we
land,
go
build
ahead.
or buy built houses, and just start to live in them. It doesn't make sense. And I'm thinking I should make a video on this because then I would be able to chest the consequences better.
Oh, the consequences of what? By saying it?
Yes, it is
Oh.
so on the ground that it's an investigative journalistic company that even had the information in the first place. It wasn't known. Nobody knew because it wasn't surface level media. Nobody reported on this, by the way.
Mhm.
Nobody.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you're saying, but if it's uh, okay, we want to move on at some point, but because we don't want to get engaged in conspiracy theory, and this is actually it's supposed to be educational. That's why I want to be just factual, because stating something is different from
Oh,
politicizing it. It's just information, it's education. If you were in a classroom setting and if you were in a seminar, um, the speaker cannot simply go up with conspiracy with a statement and then everybody's like, "Then what is it?" So it's best for us to we know that there's a lot of conflict in civil unrest in different parts of Africa, or coup. So it could be, instead of having, it could be the Congos, it could be Rwanda, it could be
by the by the way,
one of those
sorry.
countries, because we know that there are different countries that are being approached, and there are
I
other countries that are also in resistance. So, but anyway, go ahead.
interestingly, you mentioned the coup. I don't besides the general difficulty that happens in a country when there's a
Mhm.
coup, I wish every part of Africa would have a coup simultaneously. I promise you, if Africa had a coup that removed every African president as of this moment, you would be stunned at the growth Africa would make.
So that's another point that, it sounds like an ideal, it sounds like a wish, and we don't know because it's hard to predict the nature of human being. And if we bring it to the micro level, we can say the same thing. We wish our next spouse or our next relationship, whatever it is going to be perfect. And we know that through human nature and all sorts of social factors, it doesn't turn out that way. But we can be hopeful. We can be hopeful, but we cannot generalize in that kind of way. All right. So it sounds like Bernard, there's a lot of things about the different African countries that in terms of its governmentality, things are not happening the way that it should. And historically, we know that the different African countries are influenced by so many others. Of course, colonization, and it still penetrate the heart of its history. So what are you angry about?
Okay. First of all, to my left on the continental map, we have like Francophone Africa, Togo, Mali, Niger, Cameroon, Um, I visited all those places. I have spent at least a month in each of those Francophone countries, just like queuing up to, by Nigeria's border. And I get very offended every time do you know the French colony?
I get very offended every time
I get very offended every time I visit those places and every time I see how good they could be and
okay.
how bad they are in contrast.
Okay, now what's it? Hmm.
Do you know that even the French spoken in Francophone Africa is
Hmm.
not authentic French? That is, the colonialism was so bad,
Hmm.
they couldn't even teach them authentic French because it didn't make sense for you to level up on the same spokesmanship with your colonizer. Do you understand what I mean?
Okay. So it is a fact that even myself, even the way that I'm speaking, I'm not measured in the appropriateness of my enunciation, pronunciation as it relates to the English language. And it's a fact because of the impact, the negative impact. What we get is just the remnants of a language. Because remember that it was against the law to even speak English. You were supposed to be mute or even speak or even learn or even continue the continuation of your own language for those who were enslaved. So it is a fact, and it is in the history books that many languages or idioms that are spoken or dialects are not, to it's the full extent of what it should be, right?
Yes.
We know
Yes.
that in for Haiti, right? The little island, we know that for even Spanish. There's a war going on among the South and Central Americans or who speak better Spanish because they were colonized by Spain. We know that Spain reject many South and Central Americans as their brothers and sisters because again, they do not speak what are you speaking? So it is understandable that for the countries that were colonized by France, they only get the watered down version of whatever it is. And that's why. But even though with that, they still get to go, for people in those countries, they still try to migrate to France with a little understanding of the French language and try to make it. But we know that they're not doing well in France either. They are subordinates, they're less than. Majority of your African people are homeless in France. And
Yes.
if they're not into white proximity, they are in isolated in the enclaves, and I even understand some of them are living out of garbage bins. So it is really bad historically. So what is it in terms of their natural resources? Why the leaders of these countries, and I know it's Africa is a large continent. Sadly, every time the people on the West believe Africa is a country, you know,
Okay.
right. Um, what is going on? Why they can't tap into their own natural resources and build at this
All right.
point?
All right. Thank you very much. Remember when I said in passing that I wish every African country could have a coup right now?
Okay.
Cool. This is why I said that. Every, or at least the majority, the absolute majority of African leaders right now are puppet governments. Puppet governments that have no resistance to Western suppression. As long as it benefits a few key people, they don't mind. Take, for instance, Cameroon. Cameroon is literally at my backyard, quite literally. There is a waterway where I live that takes me directly to Cameroon. The guy in Cameroon has been president longer than my father has been alive. He, he, of course, he's fantastic. He's complicit to the West's suppression and exploitation of Cameroon. And that is why he can sit up there for that long. Think about Nicolas Maduro. It
Okay.
could have happened if he were a resisting force. It would even have been easier because it's Cameroon, waterway, naval ship. You understand what I mean? Very easy process. So the French colonies, the former, I don't want to say they're former because apparently the French still have a very solid grip on them. This is why the coup happened in Mali, Niger. You understand? So the French colonies, in my experience, are the worst countries currently in Africa. Why? It's almost like the French had to leave you so bad and entrench themselves into your financial processes into your banking system, into your explorations, into your science, into your technology, to the point where long after direct direct colonialism ended, there are Francophone African countries that still pay taxes to France. It's not a theory. It's one of the reasons why the coups happened.
Okay,
So
so put it this way, we don't want to wish coup on any country because we know it doesn't fare well, especially for the vulnerable women and children. It's not easy, and it's not easier to rebuild countries, even though most countries are still in the rebuilding stage, even in the sense of their emancipation. They're still in the rebuilding stage. And then to get away from the chains of colonialism, it's not easy. We know that there's some talks, and I will say this, it's easier said than done. Okay? It is easier said than done because of how deep, and you said it, how deep this is. And if you're not, if some of the larger countries or the more dominant countries then, or the country that actually colonized those areas are not willing to engage in partnership in order to create equal partnership, so that it's not where the dominant presence of France is still visible, then put it that way, where there's, as you said, they're still paying taxes in certain areas. Then it's gonna take a lot of work. But if the people in power are influenced by money to continue to suppress their own people, then it's the people themselves need to learn how to vote and use their own power. So you have to start from the bottom. A lot of time it's not from the top. It's at the bottom. Through information literacy, you have to teach and educate, and it doesn't mean it has to be over the top education. It could be basic. In order to change, you must vote. But we know that through civil disobedience, through civil unrest, that even through voting, that can be problematic because it can be disrupted by the same layman. They have their same people. You have 5 people in a community, and then they can take 3, give them money, say, disrupt this, and it happens. We know that. Okay?
exactly,
So
yeah.
it's gonna take a revolution and in different parts, not a whole and in its entirety, but parts in intermittent kind of way in order to do that. So we don't want to wish coup on any country, and I know you're angry, you're saying this, and it is understandable, so that if anybody watches, they understand that maybe you're a representation of 10,000 Africans, or 100,000 Africans that feel the same, or millions that feel this way, to understand what is happening and find some way to energize the group. But it takes education, and it starts from the community about how you can elect leaders, not the ones that can be easily bought, but the ones who can sustain, solidarity among its people. What do you say?
I agree with you, and I beg to differ on one direction. It has to start from the ground up. I completely agree with that. It has to start from information literacy. I completely agree with that. My problem stems around this. It is going to deterioration in the country gets to a point where it's like, yeah, we can still recover from here peacefully. We can still take back our country peacefully. We can still, you understand what I mean? We can still fix the situation peacefully. There's a bar to that. Past that level, the peaceful negotiative process, electoral, of course, might not work. Why? The people you want to remove, they control the military, they
Mm-hmm.
control enforcement communities. They
Hmm.
control our military, they control the electoral process that is supposed to act against them in the will of the people. What do you do when that happens? Do you understand? Can you imagine where an African leader like my country's president in Nigeria?
Okay, state the country's president so we all know. What is
My
Nigeria's president? Who's Nigeria?
Nigeria, Nigeria's president. Nigeria's president would openly in his campaign, in
So we
first
didn't
campaign,
get that because you froze. So what is a Nigerian president? Who is a Nigerian president?
when the Nigerian president Bola Ahmed Tinubu was contesting for the first term, which he's
Hmm.
currently in,
Hmm.
he wasn't stating exactly things that made him qualified to be president. Of course, everybody had this vague, the vague, what do they call it? This document they share about this is what I'm gonna do, this is what I'm gonna do when I'm president. Everybody has those, but you could see the vagueness in it. One primary thing stood out. This is my turn. This is my turn. There should not be a turn to a nation's presidency. It doesn't, it's not a monarchy. It's not a family business. Do you understand what I mean? That was a predominant message in his first campaign. This is my turn. Translated in Yoruba, it said Emilo. When you think about something like that, when you think about a mindset like that, it doesn't mean I am fit to be president because I have good intentions and good plans for Nigeria. I hope to reform the country. I hope to move this country forward. No, it means I want to be president and I'll do the best I can within every means I have to be
Hmm.
president.
Yeah.
How then? Of course, with such a perspective, you can imagine what now happens after he becomes president. The judiciary is now a puppet judiciary. Law enforcement is now the president's law enforcement community. So the electoral process, we have been the Nigerian citizenry has been aching over the last few weeks. It's still ongoing for the president and the Senate to pass one bill that says compulsory electronic transmission of voting results.
Hmm.
Compulsory electronic transmission of voting results, which means
Hmm.
when we vote, we don't want to see the results later, after which they would have been tampered with. We would love the results to be uploaded as
Immediate.
voting.
Hmm.
Yes, immediately. Would you believe me that for weeks we have not been able to pass that bill?
And what is the conclusion around that? What are people, is it kind of justifying people's mind around then that's the election is rigged? Yeah?
That is, if that bill is passed, it therefore requires that every polling unit in the country sends their results immediately as of the conclusion of elections, primarily there.
Yeah,
The results.
correct. Mm-hmm.
So if those results do not come, they are technically annulled. So we don't count them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the president and the Senate and the electoral body has said they can do it. The people who run elections say they can do it. They have the tech to do it. But the Senate says they cannot do it. Do you
So,
understand?
okay. So I know you're thinking, well, results is foolproof, meaning that it is as accurate and it is not penetrable in any way for interference. But you know
No,
that's not true. You know that's
I,
not true. If
I actually,
anything, if anything, it's more vulnerable during
no,
those
no,
times.
no.
But you have to understand, Bernard, that we just started out by you talking about how the continent itself, the different countries there are still, in the colonial,
Grips.
right. And we want to say post-colonial or neo-colonial, but you might as well just say colonial because so much has not really changed. You have to understand that outside of Africa, and you said it, that there are people, powerful people, who know the stakes and the minerals and the resources in that country. And you gave the example, you gave two examples of people who are, with their eyes closed, believing that they don't have to disrupt the status quo. There are people on the outside that are making sure that different countries in Africa fail, just like the way you will have countries in South and Central America that are, predestined to fail so that you can have and remain seven dominant countries in the world. Do you know? This is a fact. This is not a
Yes.
hidden book somewhere that only certain people have access to. They're
Yes.
powerful people that know how their job is to travel the globe, find the vulnerability in a country, go to the government or go to someone who they want to put in charge and say, tell me how you want to start a coup, because I can do it for you.
Yes.
There are people
You're
that. So when you're talking about there should be a coup across the country, I said no to that because you have no idea. You're playing in the hands of the coup makers, put it that way, who um who know who knows the ins and out of doing those things, how to start one. They know how to start uprising. They know how to get people riled up to believe there's going to be some savior. There's a savior complex, savior
I
mindset
I
that
agree
somebody's
with
going
you.
to come and save them, not realizing you have to save yourself. The coup is only meant to disrupt so it maintains a status quo so that they continue to steal your minerals and everything that you have. I don't know why you think the coup is going to all of a sudden make everything a happy day the next day. Where do you get that from?
All right. We have three. It's Niger, Mali, and what's this third guy? We
Is
have
it
had
Burkina Faso?
Burkina Faso. Thank you very much. We've had three coups in the last 2 or 3 years,
And
and comparatively, even relative to their neighboring countries, and this is not heresy. This is not. I have visited. Comparatively, they are doing better because they have. Yeah,
oh,
one second.
keep going. Yeah, good point. Good point.
They are doing better because the coup was internal and not Western motivated. It wasn't installed, it was a genuine agitation from the country's military. Of course, a coup is generally a very uncomfortable thing for the citizenry,
Of course.
understandable. But there are coups that are genuinely motivated by the hardship and terrible things going on in the country. And uh, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger have been examples of them. There is growth. There is not just growth on
All right.
paper.
So let's use the Burkina Faso as a model then, if you want to look at that. But the heat they're taking right now.
Yes.
They are vulnerable. So as much as you say growth in terms of the guy is doing some policy oriented thing to kind of not just at the macro level, but he's going from the bottom up. I remember there was it's an interesting thing where this, I don't know, some kind of famous hot stepper, what are they called? Gymnastic, fantastic kind of guy who wanted to go in and do this large Zumba. I know it sounds stupid, right? Did you hear about this?
No.
I believe it was Burkina Faso. It could be one of the other countries. There's this person in Africa that does these Zumba classes where he's the king of thighs. If you need to look it up. And he's want to go in to say he's going to get people in shape and do all this thing. But because of his brand and the way that he looks, because it starts there. It starts with the culture's brand. And if the culture's brand is it represents Western values, then what are you talking about? Or how are you going to say Mali's culture when it is so saturated with Western and European symbolism or symbolics, facts and whatnot? And I think the president said, no, you're not invited here. We don't want you here. Right? And so it sounds simple and it sounds minute that he's starting there, but that's a start because guess what? You want when I've heard of people traveling to different countries in Africa, and they're like, oh, and you said, oh, what it is like? Oh, it's just like New York. Everything is the same. McDonald's is there, this is there. And I'm like, what? Then what's the point going there? Right? So if you're talking about success in terms of okay, a guy from the military, because it's usually the military that starts
Yeah.
this, right? In all these three
Yeah.
countries that you mentioned, it's the
Yes.
military, right?
Military. Yes.
It's not just some university educated person. It could be that plus being having military experience and knowing how to run the country. And then having the backing. Because we know that this person, each president of the current government, they have to surround themselves with loyalists for this to happen. And even the loyalist it can be penetrated with
Yes.
money.
You're correct.
So, okay, three. How many more countries to go on the continent?
All right. So,
No, no, I'm
um,
asking you seriously. Too
I
many, right?
too
All
many,
right.
and potentially very uncomfortable. But in your words, and I am going to rephrase something you've said, the discomfort is proof of Western detachment. The discomfort, the heat they are taking, is proof of Western detachment. It has to happen. In fact, if it didn't happen, I and every other person who pays attention to African politics would know that this is a continuation of whatever has been happening before. The heat they are taking to the point where they're coming together to get a currency. Nigeria has been invited.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming together to get a currency, to get their own passport, to get their own legalities sorted.
Mm-hmm.
The discomfort with the West is proof that they are making progress, howbeit uncomfortable. So what I was trying to say, especially in the Nigerian situation, is so there's a bar where you can recover the country peacefully. But anything past that bar, when the deterioration is past that bar, a peaceful takeover becomes very difficult, if not downright impossible. I'm worried about that. I don't want Africa to fall into wars. I don't want Africa to fall into dictatorships. I don't want Africa to fall into coups. Even the coups I spoke about, I am pushed mentally to my limit because I promise you, these are conversations I've had with my personal friend groups, my political friends, people I have studied with. The odds of it happening outside of a coup are downright impossible. The odds of this change happening outside of a coup are downright impossible.
And I understand. I respect that because you're there and you know the nuances within your culture and some of the ideologies that are pervasive there. But one of the things that must be clear is that, for example, take the leader of Burkina Faso, that he's a nationalist. He believes in his country. He believes in his country's values, right? And he has the idea. He has the ideal of what he wants for the citizens of that country. Not every leader have that.
You're right.
They just simply want power and then do whatever it is as and being directed by some other power. But as long as they're in power, do you get it? And they
Yes.
become that puppet, as you said, they become that puppet. And that's the thing. We don't know how the leader can start out with, these honest, integrity way of doing things, and then being led by, money, being led by the wrong ideologies, and lose
You're
sight of what the citizens want or what was intended in the first place. So I understand. I still don't, not sure if that's the right approach. I do believe in democracy of the people's voice, vote. I do believe that, not the military stronghold and the takeover that has to take place. Because, it removes the voice of the people in some ways. But if, say, there's a military takeover and it is successful, then possibly giving the people a chance to make their voices heard, who demonstrate that it's not totalitarian. There's some democratic approaches that is mixed in to how the government is run. And I know there's so much we have to talk about, but that we only have a few minutes, so I'm gonna give you a few minutes more to state your points.
all right. So this is thank you for actually indicating that turning point. So this is oh my God, this is my this is my biggest fear as an African living in Africa who can choose to not live here. Let me state that again. As an African who lives in Africa and who can conveniently choose to not live here, I can do that.
Hmm.
I am worried about the African political systems deteriorating to a point where the average African in their countries are no longer, and this is where I feel like the government is taking us, especially in my part of Africa, Nigeria, and similar countries. We still have a shock factor to when the country to when the government does terrible stuff. If you keep pushing it and you keep pushing it systemically, it gets to a point where nothing you do surprises the country any longer.
Hmm.
At that point, they will take anything. At that point, every bit of resistance has been destroyed to the point where you're not surprised if your president wakes up tomorrow and does the most bizarre thing because you've lost hope for the country. Do you understand?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
am afraid of us getting to that point because if we get to that point, statistically, relative to countries who have ever gotten to that point, there is no turning back. I don't want Africans to get used to bad leadership to the point where it becomes the standard. So it's like, we'll just take what we have. At least we're alive and we can buy food. Okay, how much are you buying the food? Can you
So,
conveniently? Yeah, that's my
so,
problem.
so here's a piece that I'm gonna push back at, and you emphasize it. You said, as a Nigerian then, or African, who who can choose not to live on the continent. See, that's where the concern is. If you look around the world and other different countries that are experiencing wars and civil unrest right now, most of the agitators of that are outside of that native country. They are in a diaspora outside of that country telling people, oh, you need to overthrow the government. You need Why? Because they can leave. They can leave. What about the millions who can't? So you're saying, oh, push for military takeover, do this, do that, but yet you have no choice but to stay and be killed and be caught up in wars and the children being traumatized and the women being raped and all sorts of horrible things happen. That's not cool. That's not fair, Bernard. That's not a good. So you, if you said if you want war, then stay and fight.
I'm not
You
going
cannot talk
anywhere.
about choosing to stay. It's too
No, no.
laissez-faire. You can't
I,
do that. That's kind of that's nuts.
I
And we're
it
gonna
was,
go
I
layman
was,
here. That's crazy.
no, no, no.
We're gonna go layman here. That's crazy. The
I was,
people we hear, okay, Cuba, for example. People in the diaspora of Cuba across in the Western and European globe. Oh, get out of Cuba, do this, do that. They're outside of Cuba. Venezuela, they're doing the same thing. People outside of Venezuela, do this, do that, do all that. They're telling the people they're outside of Venezuela. People that are in Iran, do this, do that. They're outside of Iran. They're agitating people who are there. People buy it and start doing it. And then what? Where do they go?
the
They're killed,
difference,
they're maimed, they're traumatized. Children are killed, women are raped, women are left without their children and their husband. I don't think that's cool.
the
And we have
difference,
to go.
the difference is I am here. That's the difference.
You're here,
Like I
where?
said,
But I'm pushing back
no,
on
no,
your
no,
argument. You said who can
yeah,
choose to leave?
but I have not.
But it's
No, no,
possible that in the when the fight start and the war start, you're going to leave and
here,
go to your climate that is better suitable for you. What about
Sonia,
the neighbor next door who have never seen a visa in their life, who have never
Sonia,
stepped out of Nigeria, who have never stepped out of Mali, who have never stepped out of Sierra Leone in order to they only know the four corners of
so
their space. Where do
I
they
got my
go?
Sonia, I got my first job in 2017. The first time I was able to make money was in 2017, a livable, decent income. From 2018, I could afford to leave this country. This is
And
not to
because,
brag.
but you see, you're double downing on your point, and it's
No, no,
still
no.
killing it's killing
So
the point,
I'm
all the original points that you've made.
no, I'm trying. I'm trying
We
to fit you.
know that there's sins in the
No,
world.
no.
We know that there's terrible atrocities done to different countries in Africa. But
This is
if you're in
Sonia.
a position of education, if you're in a
So,
position of mobility to experience, other worlds, if you're in the position to articulate all of that, yeah, it's easier said than done versus a person who only know and breathe their locality. It is unfair.
Sonia, it's not unfair. This is what I was trying to put across. I have not gone anywhere, despite having the ability to do so, because I have hope and wish to participate in the process that liberates this country. That's the bottom line I was getting
You're
to.
willing.
I know, yes, I know people with, forgive me, I don't mean to brag, less means than me who have left the country. I know people who have left the country, and some of whom I genuinely believed in, some of whom were content creators like myself who spoke very aggressively against the government's misdeeds. But I still have some sort of faith. And going back to what I told you, I don't want to get to that point where I have lost faith, because that would mirror me and millions of other Nigerians. So I love that Nigeria still has the shock factor of, why did you do that? You understand? A
Yeah.
president takes a bad move and we can still be surprised at it. It gets to a point eventually where things have gotten so bad that shock factor is removed. From that point, everything gets hopeless. That's what I was trying to put
Okay.
forward. Not the fact
Well,
that, yeah, you get
fair,
the
fair,
point.
fair, fair. I do hear you. I hear you, but I have to speak for the little guys. That's what I do. I have to speak for the little guy, the one that, is out there probably, in the street peddling his wares because he knows that, he will not be able to, I'm not saying the possibility is not there if the government, creates it, but doesn't is not able to articulate himself as well as you do, right? To understand that he has to stay. He must stay in his community. And if there's an uprising, he has nowhere to go. So if the voices are to uprise and to create change, then you have to state and deal with the fight. You have to say it's not for you to just, okay, I'm gonna make as much noise as I can, get people in the back to hear me. And then when the fight starts, you know what? I'm just gonna take dust off my passport and jet out of here. And that is what we're seeing happening around the world. So as much as so the arguments are, yes, we know that there's the different African countries are being manipulated, right? And it's not, and it has been for century. We know that there's corruption in many factors, but guess what? It's around the world. And we're seeking solutions, but not with the idea of coup, even though it three out of so many countries on the continent, and we still need to find the numbers for that, is not enough to say that is the most effective way to go. But the energy that you have around this, I mean, we need a million more energy like this, but I still say vote. I still say vote. But we have to continue. We have to continue, Bernard.
Yeah, sure, sure.
I know, because I push back and I want to give you your voice. But let me hold on. Let me just sign us off. So thank you so much. And let's do part two.